It's 9:23.
A Sunday Times investigation has found that thousands of families are stuck in flats that are a fire risk and they cannot sell. After the fire at Grenfell Tower in 2017, we've seen a rise in the amount of flats with the same sort of cladding. Now we have 186,000 private high-rise flats which still have dangerous cladding and flammable materials. Martina Lees is a senior property writer for the Times and has the story. Martina, hello, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, explain the detail of the story for us.
Well, Grenfell happened 3 years ago, but it's now affecting the whole property market. What has happened is that we've learned that not only are there 30,000 flats with the same cladding as Grenfell and almost 200,000 with other kinds of dangerous materials, but pretty much
I think we may have lost Martina there. We have lost her.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now. Carry on.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Sorry. So not only are all those people... Great, thank you. Not only are all those people trapped in dangerous flats, but we also... pretty much anybody in a modern flat now can be asked by...
That line is not the best from Martina.
Us, no.
In a moment, we'll hear from some people who are stuck in that situation. I think the story which Martina was sort of trying to tell us there is a situation where lots of flats are deemed to be unsafe. 1 in 16 homes in England could be unmortgageable because of this. For years, in fact, because of a crisis over building safety, which threatens to freeze the housing market. A lot of it is to do with issues with the walls and with people who own flats being able to demonstrate that the walls are actually safe. Which, it affects a lot of people. It's about 1.5 million homes. And if you can't remortgage your flat, if you can't get out of it, if you can't move out, and even if there's sort of questions if it's not up to standard, that can be incredibly difficult. And of course, all of this has only come to light necessarily because after Grenfell, there's been a sort of heightened focus on building safety regulations and people sort of, what is the situation in their block of flats or in their...
It's not just to do with worrying that you can't get a mortgage. It's terrifying enough if you, that you might be living in a place that's potentially unsafe. On the line is Vicky Pargeter, who is in that very situation. She is stuck in a 2-bedroom flat in Birmingham with her toddler, who's nearly 2 years old. They can't sell because their building's walls lack cavity barriers and are rated as unsafe. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Talk me through what's happened to you. What's your situation?
So I bought my apartment back in 2009. I bought using a government help to buy scheme because I was single at the time. I didn't have a huge amount of money for a deposit. I've lived there very happily ever since. I've since got married and then our lovely little boy Blake arrived 2 years ago now. We didn't envisage the flat being a family home. It's fair to say it was always a bit of a stopgap. And when Blake started toddling, it became evident we needed to move rather quickly. He's an active young man and needs the space. So we put our flat on the market in January this year. Delighted to have received valuations in the round of 220,000. We'd paid 150 when I bought it, only to discover a week later that there was issues with, as you say, the fire breaks within the walls, and that the property was worth zero and nobody would be able to get a mortgage on it. So we've been unable to sell. We've been stuck in a flat with a busy toddler during lockdown, all trying to work in that space. And, it's seriously impacted our mental health. My husband and I are both normally very active, healthy people, and happy people, and we've both been prescribed antidepressants because the situation has really got us down. And what it also means for us is that the likely time frame for any resolution to come to all of this means that we won't be able to try for a sibling for Blake. I'm 40 next month, and we had complications with Blake as it was, so it becomes far too risky once all this is blown over for us to try for a sibling, and there simply isn't the space for another body in our apartment, frankly.
I cannot imagine what that must be like for you. You know, you think about the kind of butterfly effect, the far-reaching implications of this sort of thing. I mean, clearly there's the financial strain and the feeling of being physically trapped because you cannot move out of where you are because you can't sell and you can't afford to rent and keep your place. But do you worry about the fact that the building's walls lacking cavity barriers might make you physically unsafe there as well?
Of course, I mean that is a concern for all residents, I'm sure, in these situations. We are fortunate that, well, depending on how you look at it, we have a waking watch in place, and the costs of that are nearly £5,000 a week between all 344 apartments. So that's racking up. So there are safety measures put in place, but that does obviously weigh on the back of your mind, and this is a defect not as a result of the new building regulations post Grenfell, but these defects were actually in line with the building regs at time of construction. So yes, it's quite concerning that buildings have been allowed to be put up and not be in line with the current building regulations of the time.
And Vicky, what is the way forward for you now? If there's this issue with the cavity barriers or lack of it in the walls, is that not fixable? Can you get to them?
Well, so we have just appointed a project manager who is sort of trying to understand the report that we had in detail and what that means for us. We were hoping we may be able to fix the barriers behind the cladding without having to take the cladding down. It doesn't sound like that's going to be an option. So, all of the external wall system will have to come down, have the fire breaks put in.
How much is that going to cost?
We don't know yet. We haven't got a quote on that. But, indicative costs and indicative feelings are that there are people in the marketplace who are capitalising on the poor fortunes of people like myself. We've had quotes for a temporary fire alarm, for example, and our property management company quoted the prices were eye-watering, and this was supposed to be a solution that would be cheaper than the waking watch at £5,000 a week.
What's an eye-watering? What's the eye-watering price?
Well, they haven't told us actually, because they're trying to source some other quotes. But it's quite worrying. So we are looking at 3 different angles at the moment. Obviously, we've put in an application to the government pot, which feels like, frankly, a bit of a lottery. And certainly we know from figures that cladding action groups have been putting together that it is not enough to cover the national issue. So it really will be a lottery. So we've put in an application there. We've made a claim against our buildings insurance. However, because of the time of construction and the time that has lapsed, we're not sure whether that will be successful or not. And we are also, and we can't really talk too much about this yet, but we will be investigating legal action against the builder.
Well, one thing that you could say to us is, I wonder how angry you are at this situation. I mean, are you still furious?
I mean, it's fair to say I've been through the full range of emotions. When we first found out the severity of the problem, which was sort of 2 weeks into lockdown, I think now, and we'd got all of that anxiety of the virus and everything going on as well around us. And I think it's fair to say my husband and I had some really, really dark times. And as I said, we have both been prescribed antidepressants, which is something I never, ever thought either of us would have to do in our lives. We have excellent coping mechanisms, and, we're very active people, and we use our sport and things to cope with stress, but even that hasn't helped. And, so we've been through absolute rage. We've saved so hard for the last few years to buy the family home, the next stage. It's not an elaborate home. We just want a small house with an extra bedroom and a garden. And we've worked really hard for that. We've not had holidays or, things that we could spend our money on. We've saved and saved. And now that is completely fruitless, because any money that we've saved could quite potentially be spent on remediation works and waking watch costs and increased insurance costs. We just don't know what this is going to look like yet for us. And then there's the fear that even if the cladding and when the cladding's fixed, who in their right mind then might want to buy an apartment? But it's a huge issue, and it's blocking the entire property market at the moment. And I think lenders need to appreciate that, because there are so many of us that are looking to make that next step that can't. And yes, it really is a genuinely a national crisis.
Well, Vicky, you have our sympathies. I can't imagine what it must be like to be financially, physically trapped in such a small space in lockdown with a toddler. My heart goes out to you. Thank you so much for telling your story to us this morning on Times Radio Breakfast. And you can read the full story that Martina Lees has written. It's on the front of the Sunday Times. You can do that by buying a paper or by subscribing to the digital edition. Go to times.radio/subscribe to do that.